Good afternoon, everybody. Big welcome to the Case Flower School demonstration. Learning your main points, you know, like your 3s, your 5s and your 7s, okay? They're 9s and the 11s, and we won't get them all covered today, by the way. But it is something that some people struggle with, you know, that way. And even our own Module 1 students, I'd often see like work in the future and I say, she hasn't quite got that there, still struggling a little bit. So I thought then that maybe I would do a class on the 5 points of flower arranging, but also showing you a few little floristry tips at the same time. So while I'm getting myself organised, I need you to start commenting underneath there. Let me know where you're watching in from. Let us know what the weather is like, because it's pure shite in Dublin. It's lashing rain. And this morning, when I was talking to the students in our bloom rooms, it seemed to be lashing all over the country. Now, what am I going to be using today? So today, everything is going to be out of the garden, okay? So I have Fatsy leaves, and you know, Deirdre, I'm actually forgetting to bring in the bucket of greenery.
Okay, I'll get it now.
It's under the table in there. So I have some Fatsy leaves, and I'm going to show you little tricks, okay, how you could wire them to get a little bit of support. So these are actually Fatsy's out of Deirdre's garden. I have some cordyline leaves. Now everybody knows a neighbour that has a cordyline leaf tree kind of grown in their garden. And what I'm going to do with the cordyline leaves, if they're a little bit tipped at the top, now I don't know, Deirdre must be looking after her as well. You can always just cut that little brown part off. And using a stapler, what I'm going to do is roll it or curl it, you see, around like that. Tuck it in, so there's our little small bit, you see, just kind of like tucked in there, kind of in the centre. And then using the stapler, I'm just going to put 2 staples, one high, one low, and can you see the effect that you get? So in your flower arrangements, you will often be looking for what's called movement. Now again, Deirdre's garden, a bit of brown at the top, it's gone now, right? And again, we roll it around, like the way you would put your rollers in at night time, okay? So any of the lads watching there, any great tips on putting rollers in? So roll it around, get your stapler, 2 staples, one high, one a little bit lower, and that will hold that in place.
It seems to be lashing all over the country. Gale force winds down in Cork. Una is on from Mullingar and it's lashing. Blue skies are fluffy clouds in Woodburcote in North England. So yeah, Brigitte is getting good weather over there.
Fair play to you. So here's loads of the loops, you see, the ones that I had in the oven. And if anybody's joining in late at this stage, you'll have to rewind the video to see it. Also what I have is a couple of the, do you call them flax or euphormiums? You know that way, euphormium leaves, flax leaves, New Zealand flax, whatever. Now again, these are out Deirdre's garden. There's a little bit of brown at the top there. We just cut that off. And again, a little bit of roly-poly. Sometimes you'll find it'll roll one way better than the other. So again, tucking that in as if you're kind of like making little curls. And again, using the stapler, I'm going to put 2 staples, one high, one low, and can you see the effect? So when you're looking for a bit of movement in your arrangement, so even though this is going to start off as being kind of a traditional sort of design, I like to give them a little bit of a modern twist. And as I said, everything that I'm going to be using, besides the sunflowers, are going to be out of the garden.
I won't be able to do it before the live class, during the live class.
If you're ever stuck, next thing I have is the Fatsy leaves, or you may call them Arabian leaves, and you'll get them obviously in Deirdre's garden. I have some in my garden as well, but also lots of garden centres around the country sell them. I know for a fact that Mylands Garden Centre in Galway has them. And what area is Rockbarton Garden Centre? Somebody tapped
I think she's Mead.
Middle of the country anyway, and she has them, or he, I actually don't know if it's she or he. They have them for sale as well. But if there's any other garden centres watching, tag yourself there and let us know. Everybody go and buy yourself a Fatsia plant. They look amazing, they do, and there's so much use you can get out of them. So what I'm going to do is look at the back of the leaf. Now I do understand we're a little bit away from the camera here. And you're looking for kind of like, I'm going to call them the veins, okay? So like these little veins coming up the back of the leaf. Pick the one, fair play to you, Deirdre. Pick the one that's closer to the middle or the centre. So I'm going to pick this one. And work up about, you're going to start disturbing us here. But I want loads of disturbance. Okay. Keep going, cha-ching, cha-ching, and that'll encourage them. We're going to work up about 2 inches, 4 or 5 centimetres roughly, okay? And on either side of that, we'll call it a vein. We'll stick, these are with 20 gauge wires. We'll stick it through one side and then through the opposite side, keeping it as small as possible. So it means in the front of the leaf, you can only see a tiny little stitch. And at the back of the leaf there, you can see the 2 lengths of wire. Do you see where it's stitched through? I'm putting my thumb over it And then I'm going to bend down the 2 pieces of wire to see at the same time. Now you needn't worry if one is a bit shorter or a bit longer than the other. Once they're both coming down, squeeze them in together around the stem of the leaf. Sometimes I naturally grab the longest one if one happens to be longer. And basically all you're doing is you're just wrapping it around the stem. And this just gives you a little bit of flexibility and manoeuvring with the leaf. If I decide when I put it into the arrangement I'd love it bent that way, I can do that. Or if the leaves that you get out Deirdre's garden or whoever's garden, they're a bit floppy, you know, that way you can wire it and then you can say, now I'll take the floppiness out of you and you can straighten it back up again. Wouldn't it be great if we could do this to men as well?
Isn't
Deirdre?
it? Yeah,
Get
absolutely.
a little wire at them and do a little bit of stitching. Now in case anyone missed that, we're going to do it again. Obviously when you have it grown in your own garden, you get to pick all different size leaves. So we have a lovely little baby one here. Again, we're looking at the back. We're looking for our vein, the one that's closer to the centre. About 2 inches if you're in Ireland, 2 inches, and you're my age, 2 inches. If you're younger than me, you're probably on 4 or 5 centimetres. So roughly from there up, you know, that way, get your wire, 20 gauge wire, through one side, out through the other, tiny little stitch, push it halfway through. At the front there, you can just see the tiniest of the little stitch. At the back here, sorry, did I turn that around the right way? At the front, you can see a little stitch. At the back, place your thumb over the stitch, pull the 2 wires down at the same time, squeeze them in. If one wire happens to be longer than the other, you're basically wrapping the wire around the stem and around the other bit of wire at the same time. So if we want this kind of like curved or curled or angled or straightened or whatever, to see the way there's a certain amount of movement on it. So it's a great little trick, and also this works on laurel leaves. So you know, if you live near a church, a nursing home, or an old school, you'll normally find laurel trees. Now again, Deirdre has a laurel tree in her garden as
Joanne
well.
says that Morrison's in the UK have Fatsias in their plant section.
Yeah, because somebody in one of my bloom rooms posted one that they got, I think it was in Woodies or one of them home store places, you know, that way. And like she said, when she bought it, it was a bit tired looking, but it just came on absolutely brilliant.
And like I have to say, I don't mind them, and I chop them, and I
do the same. Mine is pure abuse. And I remember a few years ago, we were building an extension in the house, and I had them out the back garden, and the builder just fecked all the rubbish on top of them, and my husband was going to throw them out. They like pull the trees up, and I said no, leave them. They came back even bigger and better than ever, you know, the way. So they actually thrive on a bit of abuse, you know, that way. So abuse them and cut them and do what you want. The only thing I would say is keep it in more a shaded part of the garden. You get kind of the darker green leaf if it's shaded, where you get kind of a brighter coloured leaf if it's in the sunny part of the garden.
Anna says she has a giant one in the garden, 15 foot from a
Take
12-inch plant.
And then put your address underneath, and we'll organise a little bus tour to your garden, Anna.
Just keep it covered if it's really frosty. I've never even touched mine.
Covered
it does
mine.
get a little bit brown on the edges.
Yeah, what we got here, Deirdre? A bit of wild ivy, bit of viburnum, bit of
Edie Agnes, I think it is, yeah.
And God knows what else, okay?
Can't remember
again,
what else.
Literally, she went out to the garden this morning. I think I texted her at 7 o'clock and I said, don't forget the greenweed, you know what I mean? So I'm just going to throw that on the floor for the moment. Now, something else that I have that I'm going to use, again, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll plan around it. Do you remember we had Irish Green guys here a few weeks ago? James, again, somebody might tag him there in the comments for me. He was down in Kerry, gas character he was. He was well able for me. So these are the bunches of birch foliage that he has for sale, and he sells to the general public as well, by the way. And this was bog myrtle. Now, we did have another name for this, and me and Deirdre is here trying to remember. Now, I know we could go back and look at the video. Can anyone out there remember what was the name of this, the real name? It was a funny name, it was.
Okay,
Anyway, if anybody can remember the real name of this, any horticulturists, will you put the real name in the comments? I just have a blank on it, but bog myrtle is what we call it, right? And I'm going to use a little bit of that.
Back.
Okay, so there are, again, just kind of giving you an idea, like with the sunflowers. If you're treating and conditioning them, remove the leaves, a deep phase of water, recut them, do you know, that way, and keep them in a cool area, and they will last, like, you'll get about 7 days out of them. Now, a little trick. Sometimes, obviously, naturally, sunflowers look towards the sun, and I always say to the students, they have a definite front and a definite back. So if you kind of find that you want to give them a little bit more support, or they're on a tilt, but you're kind of saying, don't you feckin' tilt anymore, I want you to stay exactly as you are. If you get a 20 gauge wire, but just cut it about 3 centimetres, you know, that way, 3-4 centimetres, whatever length you want to call that there, just to kind of give you an idea. By the way, do you like my yellow apron? Deirdre made me wear yellow today. And what we're going to do with this little piece of wire is stick it down the center of the sunflower, okay? You can't even see it, it's not going to cause any harm at all to the flower. And then kind of down into the stem, and just kind of like support the stem while you're sticking it down, just to make sure that the wire doesn't come out. Now when it goes down so far, I'm just going to use the blade of the scissors, just so I don't hurt my finger. And that wire then is gone down into the sunflower, and it won't straighten it, but it'll stop it going anymore, you know that way. So it's just a little tip for you, and you could use a 19 gauge wire, which would even be better, okay? That was a 20 gauge. We very rarely store 19 here at the class, isn't this? Okay, you're going to use 5 flowers. In floristry, they say about the uneven numbers. 3, 5, 7, 9, 11 and 13, okay? Now that's not to say that you can't use 4 or you can't use 6, okay? And I often say to the students, like at the classes we teach them all their numbers, but what if a customer comes into you and they say, this would be a typical thing, well, we're 4 years married and could you do an arrangement and include 4 roses? And I say, I know, because Janette said I had to be 3, 5 or 7. Could you come back next year? Do you know that way when you're on the uneven numbers? So obviously rules are there, but rules are there to be broken. And also I encourage our students about building up their own signature style, where obviously the programme is obviously keeping to the syllabus. But then, like, at the end of the day, who decided that it has to be 3, 5, 7 and 9? So take this kind of as a guideline, but feel free to adjust it around and suit yourself. And any other florist out there that starts criticising you and saying, you know what I mean, it has to be, you can do what you like. You tell them you can do what you like within reason. That's once you get the experience and once you've learned all your principles.
There's some names coming in. Bridgie said it's a polystrus, but no, it was a funny name, like Gaga or...
something like Gaga or Gummy or I haven't got a clue.
Goo.
And maybe feckin' Kerry fella, maybe he made it up. Maybe he was taking the piss out of us on the day, and he could have been making me say that name, and maybe it's completely wrong. Now, one other little tip for you with all flowers, because obviously if you don't like sunflowers or you're not able to get them, like as soon as your hydrangeas come into flower in your garden, okay, Deirdre has fabulous hydrangeas as well, so all up to her house, is if you get 5 hydrangeas, you could do, you know, substitute what I'm using today, or if you prefer 5 lilies or 5 iris or a smaller scale, 5 daffodils, 5 tulips. Do you understand? It can be absolutely anything. But the rule is big flowers at the bottom and smaller flowers at the top.
Now, how do you remember that's the rule?
How you remember that? So if you look at me, typical figure here, okay, supermodel, small at the top, a little bit bigger on the chest, and definitely bigger and fatter on the arse, okay? So when you're making your flower arrangements, think of me, and I'm probably the same as most of you out there, the same sort of shape. You definitely have a small head. You definitely have bigger boobs, even if they're not that big, they're bigger than your head, okay? You're getting bigger. And as you move down, most women, we have them childbearing hips, and the arse and the bum and the hips and whatever you want to call it definitely spreads out a little bit more. So think of that when you're doing your flowers. So here is my head, you know, that sort of way, and here is my arse. Can you see my bum? Sorry, I shouldn't have said the word arse. So there's my bigger flower, you see at the bottom. So I can gradually grade the flowers, you know, that way that I'm getting my waist, my boobs, my neck, my head, and so on. What are you laughing at over there?
I'm laughing at you with your...
Did not say nurse.
Yeah.
Said bum. Posterior is not the right
said,
word. Keep turning this around to you, okay? So I have the flowers kind of pointed at me that I can see me bum and me neck and me head and all the rest. That I can see kind of the different sizes. So I'm picking the bigger flower, which is definitely this one. And again, you have your front and your back, but you also have like the upright way, or what I call the happy flower. And the poor sad flower. Do you see how sad that looks? Now watch the difference. You start going cha-ching, Deirdre, and look how smiley and happy the flower is going to look now. So when you're positioning the flowers, I want happy flowers, I want smiley flowers, I want heads, I want bums, I want boobs. You know, that way we're going to get that all into our display. So back to our bigger flower here. We're going to cut it on a slant. There we go. The flower is smiling. Put it on an angle, and quite low. I'm not putting any greenie in so that I can. I will eventually, okay? But just so that I can teach this as a class. So this is just kind of a cement, kind of like urn pedestal kind of container. So down low on the pedestal container, you can see the floral foam is up that little bit higher. I'm going to rest this flower, and I'm going to slightly angle it to my left as I look at it. Now if you're left-handed and you find it more comfortable to angle it to the right, that's fine as well. Just everything else has to change, okay? So everything I'm going to say will be the opposite. But it doesn't really matter. So don't put it like dead straight. You know what I mean? As I said, I want it angled one way or to the other. Now slightly. So you know the way the Scottish say a wee bit? Well, I want you, and the Northern Ireland people say that, a wee bit, okay? Because the Republic of Ireland, when you say go a bit to the right, they nearly move right over, or a bit to the left. It's a wee bit to the right, or a wee bit to the left, or as I just say, a little bit to the right, or a little bit to the left. So I'm on my bottom flower, my big flower, it's resting on the container, it's a wee bit to the left hand side, and now I'm going to just stick that into the floral foam, and I'm sticking it in a good bit because they drink a lot of water. I'm going to turn it around to you now. I'm not using a turntable because it comes up too high for me and I'm in my flat boots today. So there is our anchor tape kind of in the middle, just where my finger is, just to kind of give you an idea, you know, that way, the slight little angle. And if I let you look at it that way, you can see the way it's coming forward. Gaggle, that's the word.
The Dutch for bog myrtle is gaggle. Who
Fair
got that?
play to you. And that was what he told
Viv
me.
Bradford.
Thanks a million. You see, I told you, Viv is full of knowledge. You know that way. I was praising you there a while ago, Viv, if you were listening. That's the word. And he did tell us that was the Dutch word.
Yeah.
Again, clean forgot. And at the time I said to him, it's like a duck, gaggle, 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 or a goose, gaggle, gaggle, gaggle. There you go. There's always somebody that cops on for us and comes up. As I say, we don't know everything. We think we know everything, you know that way, but you never know everything.
Just Angela King.
Our way up, and again I have kind of another biggish looking flower. It's a fraction smaller than the previous one. Now I'll probably cut this in around the same length, okay? And I'm going to take off any leaves at the bottom, and again I've cut on an angle. Now when remember the front is looking at me now. I'm going to turn it sideways to you, because this is where everybody goes wrong. I'm now going to turn it frontways to you. When people do these designs, they think they're in the pub playing darts. So you know you're in the pub playing darts and you're fecking the darts at the dartboard. Now that's obviously not how you play darts, but I haven't got a clue. So when they're doing the flower arrangements, they're fecking the flowers in that direction. And what happens is all the flowers are looking forward. And when you look at the arrangement sideways, it gets what we call a bump, or as we call it, the pregnant flower arrangement. Now, unless you're already pregnant, and fair play to you and congratulations. But anyway, what we don't want is bumpy arrangements, okay? We want this kind of slide or kind of angled, and I'll show you that as we work along. So how you do that is you step back on the floral foam. Do you see the way I'm like stepping back? And if I went to the left-hand side angled, which I did the last time, this flower is going to be slightly angled a wee bit to the right-hand side. But it's obviously you can only do it if you're looking straight on. So I'm looking straight on the arrangement, bottom flowers to the left-hand side slightly. I'm stepping kind of in behind it. I'm going to take a fraction off that now, by the way. Fraction off it. I'm stepping in behind it, okay? It's slightly, as you can see there, a wee bit to the right-hand side. And now I'm going to push that flower down into the floral foam. Now I'm going to move it around to you just so that you can see what I've done. Can you see the way one is a little bit to the, you know, the angle to the other side? And if I turn it sideways, this is what we're looking for. No bump on me. Do you see that flat tire there? I wish, okay? That again, like there, you're getting this slide effect. And that is so important. It's how you know a professional flower arrangement to what we call a kitchen sink florist. Nothing wrong with the kitchen sink flowers. We have plenty of kitchen sink florists and hobby florists watching here. But if you watch these little points and tricks that I'm showing you, these are things that will make your arrangements a little bit more professional. So now again, I'm looking at my size heads, you know that way, and I'm going for this one next because again, it's a fraction smaller than the last one. And again, I'm going to cut this one a little bit taller than our previous layer, and if there's a leaf in the way, you can take it off. Now this time I'm stepping in behind, which is what I did previously. So I'll turn it sideways to you, just so that you kind of get an idea. Do you see the way I'm kind of stepping in behind? Again, do you remember I mentioned playing darts? If you start playing darts, do you see the way the flowers are looking forward all the time? Whereby stepping back, and this flower is kind of like looking up towards the sky, and it's obviously going a wee bit to the left again. But it's easier for me if I actually look straight on while I do it. Again, always make sure the happy side of the flower is looking out at you. And again, and I cut that one a bit too short, so just to cover my mistake, that one's just going down a little bit lower, and then I'm perfect. So there we have, again, our zigzag kind of coming up on the arrangement. And you know what? I'm going to have another little bit of fixing because it's slightly angled forward, okay? So isn't it great to see me making mistakes, you know what I mean? And that's the thing about a live show. I have no control. I can't say to Deirdre, stop that video, edit that bit out, and let's start again. Okay, let's show you. So again, can you see the way our zigzag is coming up through the display, right? So now we're going to go a little bit higher. I better not cut this one too short. A little bit higher, and we're going to go angled to the opposite side. Now all of these flowers actually have numbers, okay? And I will cover that with you afterwards. So hopefully you have notebooks and pens, because I did say to people, you know, that way, have a notebook and pen ready, because this is probably more of a class than an actual demonstration. Do you know that way? And you will pick up like a couple of little tips.
Do you want to know?
You can see I cut this one the right height this time. And again, it's kind of going in behind it, and it's angled to the opposite side, okay? And again, I'm going to turn that around just so that you can see how it's working. And can you see our zigzag coming up through the display? And then I'm on to my last flower. Now, by the way, you can go to 6 and you can go to 7, and you can continue that up. But I'm just going to keep it to the 5 here today, just to kind of give you kind of an idea. So again, I'm going to go a little bit taller with this flower here. Cut it on an angle. I'm going to step in behind it, and this obviously is my smaller flower. Do you know that way? I'm gripping the back of it here, and again I'm going to stick that one down. So it's slightly angled to the opposite side of this one, but yet it's closer to the centre, just so that we're getting our height. So can you see the zigzag coming up through the display? Now, some of you watching might say that you were taught a different way, and yet there's loads of different ways of doing it, because that actually is the number 1 flower. And if I was probably doing it, you know what I mean, for an arrangement for speed, I'd probably put that one in first and that one in second. Number 2 is the bottom. Number 1 is the top. 2 is the bottom.
Cha-ching.
3 is the middle. And 4 is halfway between the top 2. And 5 is halfway between the bottom 2. Approximately. And some people decide to bring their 5 down a bit lower, or their 4 up a little bit higher to the top one. And again, that isn't a rule. That's something that you can adjust yourself. So hopefully you picked up a few. We're not finished. Hopefully you picked up a few little tips there. So we just get rid of our sunflower stems. So as I said, I want
sorry, Janette, somebody just asked, how long do sunflowers last?
7 days kind of is the maximum. Do you know that way? Like in general, I suppose most flowers last between 5 and 7 days. There is a lot of flowers that will last a little bit longer, and a lot of flowers that will last a little bit less as well. Because this is really hard to cut, and I haven't got a secateurs handy, I just kind of broke it, and then I'm just going to recut it and get like the slant at the bottom. So this is our birch, okay, and this is from Irish Green, guys. And as I said, you can contact them. Somebody might tag them in the comments below. Just put the @ and put Irish Green, guys, and you can actually buy that off them. And even any of the UK people that are watching here, he actually has a depot in the UK, so there's no problem. You get, I actually think you get the stuff quicker than we can get it, and it's than you would. Now, just coming up in front of what I would call my number 1 flower, or the flower that was the head, you know that way, I'm just going to just hit the leaf there. I'm just adding in just another small stem of that birch, okay, just a lighter stem. And what that does, it gives you a little bit of a 3D. Do you see the way it has stepped forward? And again, like your flowers, do you see the way they're coming up in between it? And again, you can do that. You can cut smaller little pieces off it. Remember, when you buy the birch, you have it forever. Just stick it out in your garage or your shed. And again, just kind of coming down and just stepping another little bit there. And this is a bunch that I have kind of in my hand. I can't remember the price of it, but when you go onto his website, you'll see all the prices. And I'm just kind of like getting myself a little bit smaller and smaller as I work down through the arrangement. Now this obviously is not going to cover the floral foam, do you know that way? And somebody's bound to ask me, can I do this in chicken wire? And absolutely you could do it in chicken wire if you wanted to kind of be more foam. What to say? With a demonstration like this, you know that way, and explaining it, it's easier for me to demonstrate in floral foam than in chicken wire. I also find for the students, when they're only learning how to do it, you have a little bit more manoeuvring, you know that way, and you know, playing around with it when you have the floral foam, where kind of with the chicken wire you may damage the stem, and if you pull it out you might kind of like wreck the stem off the chicken wire. So all I've just done there is just add in another little bit of twig. Can you see there coming down through our display? The next thing I'm going to add in now is a couple of our fascia leaves. Now, do you remember when I was taking the fascia leaves, I said to you I had a little baby one, a little small one, okay? So I'm going to cut this short, and when you're cutting it, you can cut through the wire and all. Do you know that way the wire isn't where I'm going to cut it, right? But if the wire happened to be, just cut straight through the wire. And do you remember me saying the way I can manoeuvre, you know, this leaf? And you know where that bottom sunflower was? I'm going to add this leaf just kind of in slightly to the right hand side and slightly angled, okay? I'll turn that around to you now just in a second. And you can see the way our fatty leaf, do you see the way it's just resting there at the bottom? And then I'm going to have a look for one of the bigger ones, you know what I mean? We've loads of big ones here. And again, I'm going to straighten this leaf up. If anything, I'm actually tilting it forward, you know, that way. So really, really straightening it up, cutting it quite short again. And at the very back of the arrangement, kind of in between our sunflower and our little bit of birch coming up there for height, I'm going to insert this fatty leaf, you see down there. And you see the way it gives you like a nice background to the arrangement. Not a smaller leaf, but anyway, Deirdre kind of picked a bigger one, so I'm going to have to go for this one here. There we go.
No smaller ones there.
I don't think there is a smaller one, no. I could do another smaller one just at the bottom. Do you know what? I think I'm going to leave it out. I would have loved another smaller one coming in here. But listen, this is a live show and I have to make do with what I have. So you can see there, I had a fatty leaf in the front. I had a bigger fatty leaf at the back, and then I just kind of cupped them round. So I often describe this to the students like a Queen Victoria collar. Not that I know Queen Victoria, but the UK ones will know it. Do you know the way she always had this big Philly collar kind of coming up around her? So that's kind of the effect that I was trying to get with the fatty leaves, and that's just to let her open her top button. Do you know that little gap there? So then what I'm going to do is with our fatty leaves, okay, or sorry, not our fatty leaves, our cordyline leaves, what you can do is you can cut these on an angle, so like on a point, you see at the bottom, and then you're able to pick one side of your arrangement and you're basically sticking it down into the floral foam. And just do them all kind of like different lengths. Like I'm not measuring. If you've ever done a course with me, I don't believe in measuring. Do you know that way? As you can see, sometimes I make a cock up, you know that way. But you're better off just kind of being real kind of casual about it and kind of hope for the best. So I have inserted kind of two there at the back, but when I turn this round now in a second, you're also going to see that I'm cutting some a little bit smaller, and I'm working towards the centre of where the sunflowers have actually been inserted into the flower foam. Now I'm not finished, okay? So just to show you. So there's the two that I placed at the back. And you see the way I moved forward and then I moved forward. So if I turn that sideways to you, can you see the way I'm getting that like 3D effect? And again, if you do that to your flower arrangements, it stops that real brick wall. Again, you know the way we talked about the pregnancies earlier on, another common mistake is people start, you know that way, their first flower, and the next one is against it, and the next one is against the wall, you know that way, and it's flat. Where try and give a little bit of dimension to your arrangements, and I think kind of it looks nicer. But listen, at the end of the day, it's your signature style, it's your display. And unless you're working for a boss that kind of says, no, you can't do that, you have to do it this way, well then that's a different story altogether. So again, these all cost me for free. It cost me nothing, do you know that way? This is it. What I just did there was I slipped that little roller into the gap there between the two leaves. And again, it's just to bring in the other colour, do you see, like with the flax over to the opposite side. Now again, remember, besides the 5 sunflowers, and obviously the birch, you know what I mean? But that could be a twig out of anybody's garden. Like I'm looking out the window there and there's loads of twigs on the trees outside. So that could be any sort of a twig. It doesn't have to be the birch. Most flowers are selling sunflowers at the moment. Go in and you could buy 5 sunflowers, but you could keep it at 3 if you wanted to make a smaller version of this display. And also everything else then, as I said, was for free, like the fatsias out of the garden. So again, just bringing a little bit of our flax, as I said, out to the opposite side.
Yeah, that's
so
lovely.
Now it's just a little bit of coverage. So this is where I never got to use my gaggle, Deirdre, after all about the gaggle, but I still might use it. Watch the video. This is just ivy. This is wild ivy. I think the birds shit on that piece, Deirdre, so I'll have to get a different base anyway. But it's literally wild, you know that.
It is wild. I actually had to break it down a bit and climb and...
It's just brilliant for coverage, you know what I mean? So again, just out to one side here, this is kind of at the back of the arrangement, adding in, like say, a group of ivy, a group of the viburnum, like whatever foliages you happen to have. It doesn't show you there at the back where I've just kind of like let the ivy kind of flow over. I'm just turning around just to have a little look. What other the little bit of Eleagnus, this will be brilliant, is the annual. So what I've just done there in the centre is added in a little bit of the Eleagnus just to bring a little bit of yellow into it.
Do you know, with just 5 flowers, isn't it just lovely? Yeah.
And you know, 5 hydrangeas, 5 gerberas, 5 stems of lilies with less heads on them probably work out better. 5 big blown roses. What else, Deirdre? 5 iris.
Yeah.
I could do with another few of the
loopity-loops.
Loopity-loops over the other side, just a bit more kind of like the yellow.
And just,
so I think there's enough in that. What do you think, dear?
Yeah, I think that's
Well, I
fab.
put this in the magic bin.
Put it into the magic bin for now.
Down there in the magic bin. And do I need to gaggle gaggle? Give us a look here. Here's our gaggle gaggle. Should we bring up a bit of it? Wouldn't it be nice? Seeing that we got it. I think I'll bring it up at the back there, right? So we'll try and we'll get it in. So just kind of cutting a little bit off there. Mind your fingers. We'll bring a bit down there. So just it'll mix in. So again, as I said, it doesn't have to be birch or gaggle gaggle. Do you know that way? It can be any sort of kind of like twigs that you have. A twig out somebody's garden. You know that way. A twig growing along the side of the street. Again, I'm just going to bring a little bit down there into it. I'm getting carried away now.
Losing the money yourself.
Stop, stop, stop. And sometimes that's what you have to do. I am going to stop after this last part. So again, very simple flower arrangement. Showing you 5 flowers, the 5 points. Hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Please share this video. So again, if you can get any of your friends and that, because I think it was a good class. Did you?
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was.
What about yous out there watching? Do you think it was a good class? Did you learn anything? Did you pick up a couple of tips?
Using your scissors. Does it matter what you use, Janet? I presume does she mean a knife or scissors?
You could use a knife if you prefer. I was trained on the scissors, and I actually prefer to use the scissors. Sometimes I use the knife, but what I'm always afraid of, you know, with a demonstration, if I use the knife and I'm there kind of cutting away, and then the public who maybe haven't had professional training might go and think they can do the same thing and cut the hands off themselves, you know the way. Now, I wouldn't be liable, just to kind of say, but still, you do have to be trained on using a florist knife. So that's to be honest, most times I'm comfortable using the scissors or secateurs, and you've seen there where I cheated. I would have had to go in there and get the secateurs. I hadn't got it on the table handed to me, and I just broke the stem, and then I recut it, and it just made it easy for me.
Everyone,
good luck. Have a great day. See you all. Bye bye.